Okay, that's better. Well, thank you very much for the kind words. And before I begin, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event, the University of British Columbia and the Sauder School of Business for inviting me to be with you here. I am truly delighted to be here. So when I was first asked to come here and say a few remarks at this event, what I thought I'd do is I tried to aim my comments at the young entrepreneurs who are looking to start businesses. And perhaps there are others in the audience who are contemplating starting new businesses. I have to say it's an exciting and fulfilling experience that could probably be described as an emotional and mental roller coaster. So good luck with that. So, but what I thought I'd do in this context is share with you some of the experiences we had in building our business at Bycast, and hope that those experiences may be relevant to you as you look to build your businesses. And specifically, I thought I share with you some of the highlights and kind of the lowlights of our experience that resulted in a few lessons, and I hope that they're going to be useful to the entrepreneurs in the audience. But before I get there, I just thought I'd take a few minutes of time and tell you a little bit about Bycast and what it did and what it does, I should say. So Bycast was a Canadian software company based in Vancouver, and we made software to allow organizations to store and protect large volumes of data for life. And the kind of data that Bycast software was designed to handle is a kind of data that's referred to as unstructured data. So unstructured data is kind of, as the name suggests, this digital information that's without structure internally. This is opposed to stuff that you put inside the relational database. So things like images, diagnostic images, satellite images, photographs, things like audio clips, video clips, emails, and whatnot, they all scan documents, PDF files, they all constitute unstructured data. Well, unstructured data happens to be the single fastest growing segment of data in the world, and it has this unique attribute that when you look at unstructured data applications, a lot of it has to be stored for long periods of time. So, and Bycast made software that ran on top of conventional commodity hardware to enable organizations to store and protect large volumes of this data for long periods of time. Now, the business model was based on selling software licenses, which were capacity-based. So as customers grew in capacity, they would need to buy additional software licenses, but the software license was perpetual, and the growth in capacity meant additional software license revenues to the company. There was the traditional enterprise software annual maintenance, which is a percentage of the software license revenue that's recurring on an annual basis. And we also provided expert professional services to allow organizations to build very, very large-scale storage systems that could either be in one data center or they could span a whole country, for instance. So now, the way we chose to go to market was very different than any other storage company, and that was we selected, and I'll get to this in a little bit later, to go to market by taking individual verticals that had big need for unstructured data storage, focusing on them and establishing the business one vertical at a time. So we started with healthcare, probably not the least conservative business there is. Then we moved over and we built a good business there, and then we moved into this emerging market that came about, which was enterprise cloud storage. So guys that have data centers and they're setting up, they wanted infrastructure to offer storage as a service. And the third area we were working on at the time when NetApp acquired the company was the media and entertainment space, which is another market with large unstructured data in the form of rich video content. Now, at the time the company got acquired, we had about 250 customers in about 30 countries worldwide. So both Hewlett-Packard and IBM were licensing the Bycast software, integrating it with their own hardware and selling it under their own brand on a global basis. And we had distribution relationships with Dell and as well as with Avnet. And we had a number of healthcare software providers in the medical space that were also able to resell the software. One of the things we're very proud of, and it was a key attribute in the storage business, is 100% customer satisfaction, because once you get into the stack, people generally don't switch you out of the stack unless you screw up. So as long as you maintain real high level of customer satisfaction, you will have a recurring revenue business coming from expansions in capacity to the existing customer base. Now, the company headquarters and product development were based in Vancouver, and that facility still exists and is now a NetApp technology center that's focused on further developing the Bycast product line. And the company was profitable. It was just under 100 employees at the time that it was acquired. And we also had staff throughout the United States and rest of Canada. So this is the snapshot of where it kind of was. But that's not how it started. Where it started was probably the furthest thing you can think of from where we ended up. Actually, the company was started in 1999 by a brilliant young technologist named David Slick, who at the time lived in Squamish, British Columbia. And David was he's a brilliant guy, and he's now in charge of object storage at NetApp. And David had this idea that content companies were not making any money when their content, specifically audio content from radio station, was delivered over broadband networks, and people were listening to radio stations over broadband networks. So he had the idea of, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a system where we could insert advertising in real time into audio streams to make that personalized to each individual person that was listening to it. So that was kind of the concept, the genesis of the company. Now, I got to take you back to 1999 and how things were back then, because that was arguably the height of the dot-com era. And so anything having to do with the internet was hot. But within the space of anything having to do with the internet, there was this concept of convergence. For those of you who may have been Nortel shareholders, you remember this. The concept of convergence was that media companies were going to get together with broadband companies, and everybody's going to start watching TV and video over the internet. And that's how, and anything having to do with convergence was hot. And as a matter of fact, there were all these companies called content delivery networks that were delivering content to people. And a lot of them were going public. They had multi-billion-dollar valuations and no revenues. These companies did not have any revenues, and they were public, and they had multi-billion-dollar valuations. The other thing that was happening is there was a lot of M&A activity associated with the storage, with the streaming media convergence space. So actually, one of the companies in the space, which was similar to Bycast, got acquired for $1.2 billion in stock before it even had any revenues. They had just released the prototype of their product. So things were really heady in those days, and that was the sign of the times. And so Bycast had actually gone and raised a bunch of money from friends and family and some initial investors. And I think the way that the company was positioned is, look at this convergence thing is hot, you put your money in, it's going to be a quick flip, you make a lot of money, everybody's making a lot of money, and everybody goes happy. But that's not it happened. So I initially joined the company to help the company figure out actually how to monetize the product in the streaming space. And we took a trip down to see one of my buddies that I knew that worked at Intel, and we showed the stuff to Intel, and Intel said, yeah, this is great, we love it, because we are building a global streaming media network right now, and we love to use this technology in that network. And we said, great. So with the Intel endorsement, when they looked at a whole bunch of technologies and they selected this, we had a lot of angel investors that were interested in putting money in the company. We had Intel's venture capital arm interested in putting money in the company, and we had a couple of big brand name venture capitalists from the US looking to put money in the company, all built around the concept of convergence, Intel as the first primary customer, and I was thinking, man, this is easy. Like, it takes no work. It's going to happen. So then I remember one day, and Gord Forbes, who is one of my colleagues here, remembers, we got this call from Intel saying, geez, guys, we need to really talk to you today. And the reason is that we're not going to be able to go with that deal we talked about. And you know why we're not going to be able to go with that deal? Because Intel's deciding to get out of the content delivery network business. So Intel's going to focus back on its core business, which is selling chips. And matter of fact, we're all getting reassigned. Our executive sponsor was no longer an executive, if you will. So basically what happened was the bubble burst. And the company at that time began what I like to describe as the death spiral. And the death spiral I define as companies that have no revenues and increasing expense, and no way of being able to fund those. So So this was kind of the thing that happened, and the money that was raised for the company was at like high double-digit valuations with no revenue. So things were not going well. So the bubble burst, and we were I think at the time, we had to have a management change, obviously. And then so myself, David Slick, and Gordon Forbes were the three guys standing, and I became the CEO. So, but the reason I'm going down that path is because I think this is the first lesson that I want to talk about, which is rising tides have a tendency of falling. And that is we built the initial founders or the investors in the company built the business around the concept of a rising tide without a quantifiable benefit to an end customer and addressing a real pain that was repeatable. And that did not go well. So I encourage all of you, if you're looking at building new businesses, please spend your money wisely and that of your investors wisely and focus on addressing a pain point that exists using a differentiated solution that people care about. So that's the first thing. Then we basically had to, take stock of where we were, and really what we discovered was this. So if I kind of mentally, we made two columns in our heads, the things we had and the things that we didn't have. So if you look at the things we had some brilliant, cool technology. We didn't know what we were going to do with it, but it was cool. And that technology was protected by intellectual property, rights, patents, and stuff like that. It was really hard stuff to do. And we had a team that was absolutely committed to succeed at whatever cost, but we just didn't know how we were going to get there, but we were going to do it. And on the not-have column, we were a nice-to-have solution rather than a must-have solution. We were after the wrong market, and worst of all, we were on a short fuse, so things were going bad. And at that time, we basically managed to reduce the size of the company and try to get some initial investment into the company to keep going. And that brings me back to my second point. And we were successful in doing so. We got some GrowthWorks Capital, BDC Venture Capital, and a number of angels, some of whom are in this room, including some of the founders of Creo, some of the founders of PMC, Haig Ferris and company, basically invested in the company. And my question is, if I go back and why is it that they invested in the company? They invested in the people. So my second word of advice is, in any business, especially in the technology business, I believe that the people aspect is the most important thing. Very few companies end up succeeding for the initial reason they were founded. And it is through the ingenuity of people that companies determine how to pivot, where to pivot, and make it. And I think our investors invested in the people. And I would say that a lot of times entrepreneurs want to hold on to equity. They don't want to bring in people. They rather have a big part of a really tiny pie. And I would advise against that. I would tell you that the people are the most important things. If you invest in good people at any time, you will be successful. So I think, the other thing we did was, now if I fast forward to kind of starting to build our business, which I would say Bycast post, I would say version 2, or the restart, we were committed to the following thing. We were never going to find ourselves in that position ever again. And that meant we needed to have a must-have product that solved a real pain, and we needed to make sure that we shortened the path to profitability and shortened the path to revenue. And I think that's another critical thing. Investors are not in the business of funding things because they like putting money out. They want to make money. And I think companies need to get that through their heads. So we embarked on a strategy which went something like this. First, we take a world-class leading technology. 2, we take that technology and we apply it to create unique and specific vertical market solutions. 3, we sell those vertical market solutions through direct sales to build a referenceable install base. 4, we replicate that using partnership. And 5, repeat only after you succeed for the next vertical. So this is a pretty important thing, because when we talked to the storage analysts about this, they told us that there was no way this approach was going to be successful, that every other company that had ever done anything in the storage business was doing it in a horizontal way. Well, the reality was we didn't have the capital to do it in a horizontal way, and horizontal plays are always more capital intensive. And a lot of people who went down the capital intensive play in the same space that we were at didn't make it all the way to the end. So this brings me back to an important thing, and that is when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to make a go of it and your sales are not going well, your product is taking too long, you're not meeting your numbers, it's always easy to have impure thoughts. And those impure thoughts are, hey, the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence. I just need to go after a different market. If you are convinced that you're addressing a pain point in a large enough addressable market, you have a differentiated solution, I got to tell you, it's tough going to make a go of it, but you need to make a go of it and focus, focus, focus. So my other lesson for us, which was really important, was maniacal focus. Maniacal focus galvanizes an organization, and maniacal focus keeps everybody's eyes on the prize. So I think, again, if I go with my third lesson, I guess it is focus, focus, focus. So that keeps on. So we fast forward, and I kind of said, I told you we sold into healthcare market, and healthcare is a conservative marketplace. It is a marketplace where people don't get rewarded for buying technology from startups. They get fired when things go wrong. So this is, but it's true. It's a case where in order to get credibility within that marketplace, we had to overcome a number of obstacles. So we had to compete with big storage companies like EMC and NetApp. We had to overcome the objections of the customer, but we also had to overcome the objection of these vendors that are in the healthcare space, people like General Electric and McKesson that sell the systems that needed to run on top of our software. We needed to convince them that our software was working, and we were a reliable bunch of people to deal with. And from the beginning, we adopted this policy that every single account has to be a reference account. And that customer satisfaction is at utmost, it is the most important thing. So, and if I remember telling my staff that at any one point you think ripping out our software and putting the competitors in means the customer's happy, that's a really bad day for us, but that's what we should do to keep a customer happy. So customer satisfaction was built into the DNA of our company from the very first charter account we worked on. And I think if I were to leave you with another lesson, is you need to bake that into your companies from the beginning. You don't increase customer satisfaction by putting in processes, especially maybe later when the companies become mature, it's possible to put in procedures and processes to make sure that goes on. But from the beginning, when you're working in your early adopter customers, when you're trying to ramp up, you need to make sure when you take people's money and you got to deliver them a product, you need to make them happy. Those early adopter customers have to be ecstatic in order for the business to go forward. So my lesson here is customer satisfaction is baked into the company DNA. And I would say that out of all the things we did, those were some of the most important things we did. And I'll say a little bit about NetApp and why NetApp came and acquired Bycast. So we had no relationship with NetApp prior to the acquisition. We talked to NetApp many, many times, but we couldn't figure out how to turn love into money with them. And that was a problem because the idea was, well, if we're going to market together, we want to sell. We don't want to do logo swapping deals. So what we ended up doing is we kept going in circles and nothing happened and nothing happened. And then finally, NetApp was aware of our success in the market. We were beating EMC numerous times in the healthcare market. We had gotten one of the big accounts in the emerging cloud storage market. So NetApp woke up and decided, unstructured data storage, I got to get into that. We need to have it. This is important. So they undertook a study of all the players in the field, and they converged on Bycast. And they initially started talking to us about a reseller arrangement. And then I asked the NetApp executive sponsor after the deal closed, why did you guys decide to buy us? Why not go after other companies that are in the Bay Area? And they told us we were a real business they looked at, that we had all aspects of the business covered. We actually had customers, we had customer support, we had services people, so that you could see a company that had all the elements of being successful. And we didn't have to sell. And I think that's the other thing, is you build a sustainable business, You can't think of selling your business every day you're selling it, you're building it. You have to think about building the best business and let the exit take care of itself, which it will if you persevere long enough and you build a business that's based on solid foundations, and everything else will work out. And that's it. Thank you.